A. Adjectives connected with size, weight, and general appearance.
She introduced me to a tall, slender woman who looked very serious.
He was too scrawny to be a football player.
A lanky teenager walked in.
A gangling youth approached him. A gangly youth approached him.
Recent studies show that an increasing number of children are obese.
She's the rather stout woman wearing glasses over there.
My grandfather was a stocky man with big hands and broad shoulders.
B. Aspects of appearance and complexion.
Hi, Jessica. Guess who I bumped into the other day? Our old college mate, Rob Parsons. First thing I noticed was he's really bulked up. He used to be so lean and wiry, didn't he? But also that he still looks so unkempt. His sister was always the opposite. Never a hair out of place and immaculate clothes, remember? But they were different in appearance too, weren't they? He has a rather swarthy complexion. His sister's was more sallow. I must say, he looked a bit haggard and exhausted too. He's probably working too hard. Anyway, how are things with you? Beth.
C. Facial expression.
What are you grinning at?
You've got ice cream on your nose. It looks so funny.
Look at those models pouting for the photographers.
She said if her daughter doesn't get what she wants, she pouts for the rest of the day.
You don't have to grimace every time I eat raw garlic. I happen to think it's delicious.
I arrived late and she just scowled at me.
He was leering at us. I felt very uncomfortable and wanted to leave.
D. Mannerisms and actions.
I asked him for advice, but he just shrugged his shoulders.
He folded his arms and crossed his legs and waited for me to speak.
He sat there twitching nervously as he waited for his interview.
She bites her nails all the time. It drives me crazy.
She clenched her fist and told him to get out of the room at once.
He just kept tapping his fingers on the table, looking impatient. He just kept drumming his fingers on the table, looking impatient.
A. Adjectives to describe people's personality or behaviour.
Impetuous. Acts on a sudden idea without thinking first, often negative. For example, she's so impetuous. I wish she would consider things before acting. Impulsive. Similar to impetuous, but can be used in a more positive way. For example, his impulsive generosity led him to give money to anyone who asked for help. Effusive. Gives exaggerated expression of pleasure, praise, or gratitude. For example, she always gives me such an effusive welcome when I visit her. Excitable. Easily excited by things. For example, he's a very excitable child. He needs to calm down. Pushy. Always selfishly promoting your own position or interests. Informal. For example, she's so pushy. It's typical of her to demand a pay rise for herself and not care about the rest of us. Self-conscious. Nervous or uncomfortable because you know what people think about you or your actions. For example, Freddie seemed self-conscious and uncomfortable when he had to make the announcement at the party. Well-balanced. Calm and reasonable and showing good judgment. For example, the teacher said Maddie was a well-balanced child who got on well at school. Taciturn. Reserved or says very little, generally negative. For example, he was a bit taciturn when I first met him. He hardly said a word.
B. Sociability.
Chloe's such an introvert. Her brother Mark is so outgoing and is such an extrovert. Strange, isn't it?
Mr. Rogers is such a diffident man. He seems to have quite low self-esteem.
English people are traditionally thought of as rather reserved.
Eva tends to be rather aloof. I don't know if she's just shy.
My Aunt Annie can be very haughty and disdainful at times, but she's lovely, really.
I've always found Professor MacToft very unapproachable, but his colleague Dr. O'Daly is very approachable.
Natasha is very conceited and self-important, but Rachel is such a modest person.
Jo is always so polite and respectful. I wish he would be more informal and just treat me as his equal.
C. Character traits.
Ian is a somewhat naive person. He thinks love can solve all the world's problems.
Telephone salespeople often take advantage of gullible people.
My father was a very conscientious man. He never took time off work unless he was really sick.
She's a restless individual. I don't think she'll ever settle down in a job.
You are so obstinate and pig-headed. Why don't you listen when people give you advice?
A. Love and romance.
When Tom met Lily, it was love at first sight.
She fell head over heels in love with him.
Nick only has eyes for Sophie. He's not interested in other girls.
Lauren was more than infatuated with Dave. She was completely besotted with him.
I've often seen Matt and Ellie at the cinema together, but it's purely a platonic relationship.
B. Friendships and other positive relationships.
An owner and I hit it off immediately. We're true soulmates.
The moment I met Rob, I could see he was a man after my own heart.
Charlie and I get on like a house on fire.
Rob and Jamie have been bosom friends for years. Rob and Jamie have been bosom buddies for years. Rob and Jamie have been bosom pals for years.
Marta and Carmen are inseparable.
There's a close bond between Rushta and her aunt.
C. General social relationships. Collocations. The replies in these conversations are another way of saying what the first speaker says.
You seem to be very similar to Ben, the way you think and look at life.
Yes, we've always been kindred spirits.
What a nice wedding. Nathan and Amelia seem to be perfect for each other.
Yes, such a well-matched couple.
Our Spanish friends are always phoning their brothers and sisters.
Yes, well, I think family ties in Spain are much stronger than here.
I've never met Rosie, but I know several people she knows.
Yes, she said you have a number of mutual acquaintances. Gareth has a lot of respect for Claire.
Yes, he holds her in high regard.
Sarah and Anna are very close these days. I'm sure they share all their secrets.
Yes, they're as thick as thieves.
D. Nouns and adjectives.
Adoring. Adoration. For example, the parents gazed at their newborn baby with a look of tender adoration. Affectionate. Affection. For example, he never shows much affection for his children. Amiable. Amiability. For example, she always treats us with great amiability. Considerate. Consideration. For example, have some consideration for the other students, she said angrily. Faithful. Faithfulness. For example, faithfulness is the key to a good marriage. Fond. Fondness. For example, Over the years, she developed a fondness for Mario that went beyond a purely business relationship. Loyal, loyalty. For example, he was a great team captain who inspired loyalty in the players.
A. Friendship. Friends are people who are much more than mere casual acquaintances. True friends are always there when you need them, as you are for them. We expect loyalty from our friends, despite our faults, and should give it in return, never speaking ill of them behind their backs. As well as having friends and casual acquaintances, we have relationships with colleagues, allies, and partners. Here are some qualities of friendship and their opposites. Quality. Loyal. Loyalty. Opposite. Disloyal. Disloyalty. Quality. Supportive. Opposite. Unsupportive. Critical. Quality. Honest. Truthful. Opposite. Dishonest. Untruthful. Quality. Respectful. Respect. Opposite. Disrespectful. Disrespect. B. Good and bad relationships. I used to think of Kate as a friend, but I now realise she has been two-faced towards me.
Russia and America were allies in the war.
We were business partners, but now we're bitter rivals. We were business partners, but now we're arch rivals. Indeed, I could say we are now sworn enemies. Fergus has been disloyal to me on a number of occasions.
Okay, I was dishonest with you. I'm sorry, but I didn't want to hurt you.
Sam has been very distant towards me recently.
Jamie has always been scrupulously honest in his dealings with us.
I would expect complete and unswerving loyalty from a true friend.
Monica has always been my staunchest ally at work. I can always rely on her to support me.
I was amazed that someone who called herself my friend could be so deeply critical of me. C. Breakdowns. Expressions and collocations.
Unfortunately, relationships sometimes break down because of genuine misunderstandings.
A rift can develop between two people or groups.
There's been a lot of discord in the office lately.
My father and I don't see eye to eye on most things.
Jack and his sister have been on bad terms for a long time.
His love affair with Anna has turned sour. I think they'll split up.
Our marriage has had its ups and downs, but basically, we're okay.
A bumpy relationship.
A broken home.
A family feud.